All right. Good morning, all. My name is RJ Narang, and I am the president of DemBiz. I'd like to welcome all of you today to our special conversation with Congressman Khanna of California. Just a little housekeeping to begin. I will ask some questions, and if you have any questions, please type in your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I will try to get to as many as I can. Also, if you're interested in learning more about DemBiz and signing up as a member, please go to our website, dembiz.com. As a side note, the Congressman is a little short on time today as he has a hard stop at 9:25 due to a vote. However, we will try to get to as many questions as we can today. Now to our special event. To our special guest of today, Congressman Khanna represents the 17th District of California, located in the heart of Silicon Valley. He has also written a new book, Dignity in a Digital Age, which provides a roadmap to bridging the digital divide in America and rebuilding the middle class. Congressman, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you for your leadership, RJ, in Virginia, and for all that you do with DemBiz.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I wanted to start by talking a little bit about the news of the day, and that is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. What were your initial thoughts when Russia's invasion of Ukraine began? And what are your thoughts now as you watch them escalate their efforts?
Well, it's a horrific war, unprovoked, killing mothers and children, committing war crimes. I admire the Ukrainian resilience. We have to give them more weapons. We have to give them money in this just fight for their survival, for their sovereignty. And I believe that Putin is realizing the consequences of this war. I mean, it's destroying Russia's economy. It's hurting his army. But he is not acting in a way that's completely rational. And so our best bet is to continue to support the Ukrainians. Hope that Putin comes to his senses as he's losing the war and that we have some ceasefire.
Generally, talk a little bit about sanctions. Americans largely favor sanctions with over 75% supporting oil and gas sanctions, according to a CBS News poll. But seldom do people realize the tangible consequences both abroad and here at home. So could you break it down a little bit, the real tangible effects of sanctions?
Well, the sanctions are really hurting the Russian economy. I mean, you have MasterCard, Visa pulling out. You can't have ordinary Russians aren't being able to buy things on credit cards. You've had shortages of food there. You've had the ruble collapse and the economy almost teetering on depression. All of this is adding pressure from Putin and in his inner circle to say, look, this war is hurting Russia. It's not helping Russia. And of course, we face the consequences, and we did the correct thing by banning oil, but that's not without cost. And it was one of the reasons for the escalation of oil prices. Now they've stabilized, and wheat is a big issue. Now, wheat, of course, from Ukraine has hurt, is going to hurt commodity prices here. So I think part of the inflation we're seeing is caused by the war, but we have to stand with Ukraine. We have to make sure that we continue to sanction Russia. That's the only chance of putting enough pressure on them to come to the negotiating table and have a ceasefire.
Right. Speaking of rising gas and food prices here at home, you are currently co-sponsoring a bill known as the Big Oil Windfall Profits Tax, which is geared toward dealing with the issue of rising gas prices. Talk a little bit about this legislation.
Well, it's simple. If you have oil companies making billions of dollars a year because of profits, because of high oil prices, they should be taxed so that ordinary workers aren't faced with higher prices at the pump. And if they're charging more than $66 a barrel, they are taxed, and those go to quarterly checks to working class Americans in terms of an inflation rebate for what they're having to pay to fill up their gas tank. So that is the bill. It got tremendous support. I mean, support across the Democratic Party, which Sheldon Whitehouse, Sherrod Brown, Tom Malinowski, people in swing districts. I mean, people understand that in a patriotic war, oil companies shouldn't be profiting from that.
Right. Yep. That's a great point. You talk a little bit about what more we can do. Short of military action, President Zelensky reemphasized his request for a no-fly zone in his address to Congress this week. Is imposing a no-fly zone a real option, you think? And what consequences do you think imposing a no-fly zone would have, both for the world and for Ukraine?
I don't think it's a real option right now. Even the Republicans have been reluctant to call for it, understandably so, because we don't want to get into a shooting war with Russia. Who's going to fly the planes to enforce the no-fly zone? It'd be American service members, and they're going to get shot at by the Russians. So it's putting Americans at risk, their lives at risk, and is risking a war with Russia. I don't think that that's prudent.
Right. How do you, I know this is kind of a loaded question, Congressman. How do you see this playing out in the end, or how would you like to see it playing out? Would probably be a better way to put this.
Well, obviously, I'd like to see it playing out with Ukraine's complete victory, but I don't. I don't know if they can pull that off. I wouldn't count them out. They've been very resilient. What we probably need is some kind of ceasefire where Russia agrees to withdraw, respect Ukrainian sovereignty, and Ukraine obviously would have to make certain compromises. Then I'd be for those compromises that President Zelensky is willing to make. He's the leader of Ukraine. It's not for me to tell him what to do. But I think that's the best scenario, some kind of ceasefire where Russia withdraws and Ukraine makes certain compromises.
Right. We do have our first question from our audience, and this is one of our fellow board members, Khanna Shirsantavan. Mr. Shirsantavan says, thank you for taking the time. And what version of Build Back Better do you think has the most realistic chance of passing right now, is his question. Is there a scaled back version of that you see passing Congress?
I do. I think that a bill that has a bold climate provisions, $400 or $500 billion, pre-K for every 3 and 4 year old, and some form of Medicaid expansion can pass. I think it can get Manchin support. It can get the 51 votes. Right now is the time for the president to say, if we want to beat petrostates like Russia, Iran, Venezuela, we need to have a moonshot in renewable energy and clean energy. And that is something that I think can pass, and we're working to compromise on that. It wouldn't be the 1.75 or 2 trillion that the House passed. It'd be significantly less, but it would have a lot of the bold priorities on climate, on education, on healthcare.
Right. Switching gears, let's talk a little bit about a subject that is near and dear to your heart: big tech's role in democratizing society, which is a predominant theme of your new book, Dignity in a Digital Age, which is a great read, by the way. I would encourage anyone to pick up a copy. In your book, you allude to those Americans that have been left behind by the digital revolution and the gulf which now exists between them and those that have done well. What can big tech do to help close the gap?
We're going to have 25 million digital jobs. These are jobs that are in manufacturing, retail, in all different kinds of areas. And we need to make sure that they're distributed. There should be a knowledge economy in North Dakota. There should be a digital economy in every part of this country that allows people to build wealth and take advantage of this new architecture that's impacting almost every sector of society. And a lot of the policies and ideas I present in the book is how we can do that, how communities have succeeded in doing that. Of course, most famously right now, you see Intel that is doing that in Ohio and creating 7,000 jobs, a big new semiconductor manufacturing plant. So we need more examples like that and more policies that facilitate that.
In line with that, in the book, you state that we need a recentering of Silicon Valley values so that companies embrace their dual responsibility, not simply to shareholders, but also as key stewards of the modern public sphere. I think those are pretty strong words. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, in addition to distributing the jobs out to different parts of the country, I think that what we need to do is make sure that tech has a internet bill of rights, and that they themselves understand that they have a responsibility to public discourse. You can't have, for example, incitement of violence on these sites, where on January 6th, before that, Facebook knew that some of the people there were talking about assassinating Mike Pence, and they didn't take those posts down. You can't have vitriolic disinformation and the growth of QAnon on these sites. So all of that are areas where these tech companies need to understand their role in democracy as new media companies.
Right. It's funny you say that, because that was going to be kind of what my next question centered around. You've alluded to how the digital revolution is a force that can reduce the divisiveness and dysfunction of our contemporary democracy. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, in the first place, if we could distribute the job opportunities, that can reduce some of the tension, right? I mean, one of the reasons that people are upset is that the communities have been deindustrialized, their churches are dwindling, their kids have to buy one-way tickets out. We have to figure out, how do we bring these new jobs? How do we bring these new opportunities to places left out? And we could do that. And we could do that, for example, in rural Virginia. We could do that in different parts of the country, and so that people don't have to leave their hometown and can have a good paying job. And that, I think, would help bring some of the country, heal some of the divisions if there's mutual prosperity, shared prosperity. Right now, when Youngstown does well, Roanoke, Virginia doesn't necessarily do well. I mean, when Silicon Valley does well, Roanoke doesn't do well. How do we create more interconnection in the economy? And then how do we make sure that these public spheres of the Facebook, Twitter, modern digital public spheres like Zoom are helping democracy, not undermining it with misinformation and hate.
Right. In trying to democratize society, you've discussed the creation of a national digital core of young people who would go and live in different communities throughout the country for a period of time. Tell me how this would even the playing field and close the economic gap you've alluded to.
Well, we have so much talent in our country, all these tech folks, and they all want to do some kind of public service. And so what if they got to do 6 months and they go to a community college, they go to a private college, and they help them set up their digital curriculum. They help them come up with digital credentials that are actually going to lead to jobs, as opposed to currently where there's a disconnect, where so many college offerings, community college offerings, community courses aren't really preparing people for the modern jobs. And so I said, why don't we use all this talent, and people want to answer the call to service. They don't want to do it for their whole lives, but they want to do it for 6 months, a year, and have them go back. It could be to the hometown where they grew up, or it could be where they went to college or near there, and contribute.
So you see it kind of being like an AmeriCorps kind of thing.
An AmeriCorps for technology, exactly.
Right. That's a good way to put it. I like that. I'm going to steal that, Congressman.
Well, if you can run with it, if you could get Governor Glenn Youngkin to adopt it, maybe it could start in Virginia.
Oh my goodness, that's a different story altogether. We'll have to talk about that offline.
Obviously, I was very disappointed when he won, just personally. But if anyone, I on these ideas, I think they're bipartisan. Anyone who runs with them can help in terms of job creation and in terms of preparing the country for the digital economy.
Do you see that, Congressman? Do you see some leeway for bipartisan cooperation on a lot of these ideas you talk about? I
do. I just have a call today later with Mike DeWine on Intel going to Ohio. I've worked with so many people on these issues. So yeah, I do. Yeah, they're receptive to it. So it's a good sign. That's a good sign. That gives us all hope. I want to talk to you about the Internet Bill of Rights. Tell me a little bit about that and what you would hope to accomplish with that. The Internet Bill of Rights is first about making sure that you have an inalienable right to your data. That's the key thing. Your data is yours. You ought to have a right to it. It shouldn't be taken from you by platforms and used to manipulate you, used to manipulate other people. That's at the core of the Internet Bill of Rights. You have rights to your data when you're online. And then we have a lot of things about opt-in consent and right to delete, but it all stems from that fundamental principle. Good deal. Pretty straightforward and needed, I must say. We do have another question from our audience. This is from John Lavas. And he asks, what do you see on the horizon for any serious chance to get past the total dysfunction on Capitol Hill? Well, the Competes Act is a good story. I mean, I co-sponsored it. I led it in the House with Schumer, with Todd Young, with Mike Gallagher. It's going to have $50 billion to bring semiconductor manufacturing to the U.S. It's going to have $200 billion in cutting edge technology, biotechnology, synthetic biology, quantum computing, AI, clean technology, creating tech hubs around America. That is preparing America for the future. And it's bipartisan. It passed the Senate with almost 70 votes. It passed the House overwhelmingly. And right now we're going to reconcile it and the president will sign it by May. So there are times where the Congress surprisingly can work, but we just need more of them. And it does seem like there's more leeway when it comes to the business and technology sector.
it seems to be there's more room for cooperation than not there.
I agree with that. I think when it comes to economic job creation, when it comes to making sure America is competitive against China, those are areas of cooperation. Some of the cultural issues are very divisive, and we have a different view on a lot of them, but then on different sides of the hill. But the economic issues are ones that we can come around.
Yeah, agreed. We have another question from our audience. This is from Lauren Hershey. The U.S. attracts about 1.3 to 1.4 million students to its higher education system on average annually, usually full tuition paying for undergraduate, professional, and graduate education. Is there anything further Congress might do to keep this going strong and even expand the presence of international students? It is soft power par excellence.
I love that. I agree with that. It's one of our great exports. It helps keep our universities strong and fund them. And it gets us talent from around the world. How are we going to compete with 1.4 billion people in China? Only if we have talent from around the world coming here, wanting to come here. They still want to come here, but we want to make sure that they come and we retain them. Wouldn't we rather they do their innovative work here than in China or India or anywhere else? So I'm all for that. I think we have to welcome students. We have to welcome them from around the world, and we have to say that's America's distinctive advantage.
Agreed 100%. I know we're running short on time here, Congressman, so I think I have one more question for you here. And this is one I was really curious about because I like this term, what is progressive capitalism? And what role does it or should it play in evening the playing field, so to speak, between the haves and have-nots? How does it relate to the general themes we've discussed?
Well, I have a whole chapter on progressive capitalism in the book, and I call myself a progressive capitalist. I think I'm one of the people who, as a politician, have popularized the term. It's Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel laureate economist, I think, coined it. But it's simple. It means I believe in innovation. I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in people going out and building wealth, making wealth. But I think that everyone ought to have the shot I did growing up in Philadelphia, which is a good public school education, healthcare, nutrition, little league coaches or teachers who believed in me. So that I'm born to immigrant parents, born in Philadelphia in 1976, our bicentenary, elected at the age of 40 to represent Silicon Valley, arguably $11 trillion of market cap, arguably the most wealth ever created in one place in human history. That's an American story, but it's an American story because of the opportunities I had and the healthcare and education I had. So as a progressive capitalist, I say, let people explore and take risks and dream big. Let them start businesses and start companies, but let's make sure that we give them the basics in healthcare and education and safe communities and mentors and people who believe in them.
I love that. I love that term. Congressman, you should consider running for president someday.
I'm happy where I am. I know there, every day, every few times the media loves to, they put every member of Congress and senator gets one of those articles and things, but I am happy. I think I have one of the greatest jobs in representing Silicon Valley, and I look forward. I'm running for re-election, and I look forward to supporting strongly President Biden in 2024. I think he's doing a very good job.
I know. I'm teasing a little bit, but you are truly a great public servant. We need more public servants like you. Please come back and join us again. I know you're running short because you got to get to a vote, but I want to thank you for joining us, Congressman. Please come back again. We'd love to hear more.
Thank you. What an honor, and I appreciate it. I've heard such great things about what you're doing in the state. I think we need to be a party that stands for business and entrepreneurship as well, and job creation. Sometimes I think that gets lost in our messaging. You can be for fairness and everyone having healthcare and education and still celebrate entrepreneurship, business, job creation. And you're doing that. So I appreciate your leadership and the leadership of your group. Boy, we need that in our party.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Congressman. Everyone, I want to remind you to join us next Friday for our webinar with Sky Pyramid of Democracy Forward. And thank you all. Have a good day and enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much.